have given us fresh perspective on making our cities more inclusive and livable for families. He's truly given us much to think about. Now it's time to invite Ms. Smritika Srinivasan, who is here to give her valuable inputs on creating healthy streets for a sustainable future. You're welcome, ma'am.
We mostly work with the cities of Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra. Previously, we worked in Jharkhand and at the national level, engaging with 100 smart cities. But today's presentation, I'll also talk a little bit about some of the learnings from Chennai, Pune, and Pimpri Chinchwad, the core cities that we've been working with. So all of the speakers have spoken about urbanization and its impact, and I specifically want to address how that impacts transportation. So it took almost 60 years for vehicle count to actually get to the 10 crore mark. But we actually ended up doing the same thing again within 6 years, between 2009 and 15 itself. This itself tells you that with rapid urbanization, there's also a rapid increase in private motor vehicles. And if you see this graph, the urban population grew by 26%, but the private motor vehicle ownership grew by around 138%. And with the rising increase in vehicles, it also means that we have a lot of issues like congestion, pollution, safety, and of course, this is something most of us experience in our cities itself. And not just that, if you look at our streets, it's almost always chaotic, which is similar to this image that you see here. And it often ignores the needs of pedestrians, people who take the public transport, and has been focusing only on development of infrastructure for private motor vehicles. And often we hear from cities that actually people do use a lot more vehicles these days, but that's not true, because we found that over almost around 75% of our population still commute by sustainable transport modes. And by sustainable transport modes, I mean walking, cycling, and public transport. And actually, private vehicle ownership just accounts for 1/3 of the mode share itself. But all of our infrastructure is designed for them, and they occupy more than 2/3 of the road space. And 1/3 of all the trips is just by one particular mode, which is walking, but we barely have any footpaths in our cities. And we also have 20% of trips being made on public transport, but this also ties back to my previous point that access to public transport through footpaths and cycle networks is not there. So even if public transport is improved, how do people get to these transit nodes itself if there is no infrastructure leading them to this? So this is what we have been designing for. We have been seeing a lot of flyover projects, road widening projects, and the more and more you keep working on such projects, this is exactly what you're going to get, because there are studies that have also shown that these projects give temporary relief, but in the long term do add to the congestion and chaos in our cities. So what can we do? First, like I mentioned, currently our cities have been designed around the private motor vehicles, but good cities are actually designed around public transit and people-centric infrastructure itself. So the first thing we need to do is, probably this pyramid is a good reference, we need to start prioritizing vulnerable users. And vulnerable users in this case are the pedestrians and cyclists, and then comes the public transport itself. And the reason why, beyond just pollution related savings, public transport, walking and cycling has actually shown that it takes up lesser space, and which means that it's a much more efficient way of moving people itself. I think a lot of our speakers have highlighted the need for creating walkable cities, but walkable cities are the ones where, and it's also called by a lot of different terms, like 15-minute cities, 20-minute cities, and so on. And this is where you have all of the amenities in walkable radiuses. And the reason why we want to also promote walkable cities is because we want people to make that shift to public transport or more efficient and sustainable modes, at least for short trips. The idea here is not to completely say that vehicles are a big no, but the idea is that at least for short trips, can we get people to start prioritizing much more efficient and sustainable modes. And the other thing that we most often miss out in all of this mix is actually creating cities for people. This particular image is from Pondi Bazaar in Chennai, where the street was revamped to give more space to pedestrians. And in fact, we have been met with a lot of hesitation from city leaders if such projects will actually reduce the economic value of a particular street itself. But in the case of Pondi Bazaar, we have seen that sales have gone up because of such a revamp. And also, we have been talking about improving development around transit. And what I wanted to highlight, I don't think you can see it too clearly, but what I wanted to highlight is that there are 8 principles of transit-oriented development. And pretty much all 8 principles is what we've been talking about here: promoting walking, cycling, improving, making the cities more compact, densifying our cities, and so on. So what I want to highlight here is that most of the Tier 1 cities have also gone through all of this, have made some mistakes in the past. But where we are at with Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities is that we are at a good starting point to start creating that blueprint for a sustainable development in the future as well. So just looking at what cities can do, one is at the urban planning level and one is at the street level itself. At the urban planning, it is about creating more walkable and more shorter blocks. Shorter blocks pretty much ties to the whole concept of walkable cities, creating shorter distances between different destinations itself. And there are solutions like this where the setback between buildings have been made into walkways for pedestrians itself. And the other thing is about preserving our mixed land use and improving this around cities itself. India is mostly a mixed use. We have seen most of our streets having a lot of mixed use development, and this is actually what provides a lot of the amenities and enables that 15-minute cities itself. So it's also important to keep growing such uses in our streets. And also, as we are coming deep, digging deeper down, it's also about creating humane scale of street widths itself. Walkable cities and creating compact neighborhoods is at the larger level, but when you look at the street level also, you need to see how people can move efficiently from one side of the road to the other side. And that brings me to the concept of healthy streets. So healthy streets are the ones, I'm not going to go deep into each of the elements of concepts of healthy streets itself, but it's the one where public transport is prioritized, walking, cycling is prioritized, and it also activates or creates for active social life where businesses flourish and so on. And if you had to reimagine all of this in a street, this render pretty much showcases that, where people with disabilities can also use the space. Parking is organized, which is a big issue in a lot of our cities itself. And not just that, and looking beyond streets, most of the cities, the mistake that they do is they almost forget to look at intersections, which is the place where a lot of vehicles, a lot of people are moving, and creating intersections which are a lot more compact and are more people-friendly is also important. And the other thing that I had previously mentioned about is parking. Now, with the increase in private motor vehicles, there's also an increase for the demand of parking itself. And what typically happens is the more cars or more private vehicles increase in the city, if the cities keep going on providing for parking without managing it, it just invites for more cars or vehicles to be in the city itself, which means that this is just going to be a constant cycle and we are never going to break this. So what we actually need to do is start pricing parking and start managing parking. This will also help in getting people to shift from private motor vehicle modes to move to more sustainable transportation modes. Um, yeah, so these are just the overall concepts of what we can do, but I also wanted to touch upon some of the solutions cities are working on today to get all of this done. And it can be summarized as 6 larger level steps itself. So the first one is laying the foundation, which basically talks about the plans, policies, guidelines that we need to create today, so that for tomorrow there is a good set of metrics and a way to ensure efficient development. And the reason why this is also important is in cities like India, where the government is constantly changing, the bureaucrats are changing constantly, guidelines, documents, and policies like this is what will ensure the longevity of the concepts we embrace today. The second one, I think we have been talking about securing funds. For example, in the case of Chennai, because Chennai had adopted complete streets guidelines in the past, they had set up a committee to ensure NMT, that is non-motorized transport networks in the city. It attracted the funds of World Bank itself, and right now World Bank is funding a project called the Complete Streets, or the Mega Streets in Chennai, where we improve walkability within 6 neighborhoods in Chennai. And not just that, there are multiple funds available within city budgets that cities can tap into, which we have been supporting cities in identifying what these funds are. But also, I'm not sure who mentioned, but there are the kind of projects we take up today can also make sure that there is funding for similar projects. For example, in the case of Barcelona, they had priced parking, and whatever revenue they got out of parking, they've put that money into maintaining a public bicycle sharing system. So there are strategies in which we can manage funds, which most Indian cities are also exploring right now. Can you move on to the next slide? Yeah. And it's also important when we're working on all of this, there are the need for planners and designers and people who can bring these innovative solutions to the cities itself. And creating such projects is no easy feat. So we are getting cities to understand that they need the right kind of designs in place to embrace this sustainable future. Next slide. And beyond that, it's not just looking at hiring consultants or putting the right kinds of plans in place, but it's also important to make sure that whoever is going to be implementing, which is mostly the corporations or the city engineers, have that capacity built, like they are brought on board for why they are doing this and are also regularly trained. We have a lot of innovative concepts coming in, and it's important to keep engaging with the different city engineers to make sure that their team muscle is also built. Next slide. And community engagement and interdepartmental coordination has been a key thing that most Indian cities lack, but at the same time, a lot of other Indian cities are still leading the way and trying to bring this in. The reason is because we are creating cities for our people, and without the voices of our people, there might not be enough ownership for such projects. So bringing people together is important, and not just the community, but also different agencies. Maybe Albert might elaborate a little more in the next session, but there is a subcommittee, multiple subcommittees formed in Chennai under Kumta itself, where they bring different agencies together to discuss on the different solutions they're planning to implement. So that is still something we're working on, learning from, and I'm sure Albert will have some learnings to share from it. And last but not the least, the most important thing is monitoring learning and evaluating the work that we do itself. So it doesn't stop with just creating a pilot project. It also is important that we learn from the effects of these particular project and then scale it up. For example, Pune, this is the example of Pimpri Chinchwad, where they had done a walk cycle analysis in collaboration with ITDP to see how effective some of the streets they had developed and how effectively it's functioning. And now this, and similar exercise was done in Pune, and now Pune is taking up an entire walkability audit of the city itself to see how much more walkable they can make their city going forward. So just to summarize, I wanted to show two examples from the two cities we primarily work with. One is Chennai and one is Pimpri Chinchwad. And in the case of Chennai, like I mentioned, Chennai has been leading the way. They have adopted progressive policies and guidelines and are even currently in the process of adopting the parking policy, which a few cities in India have spearheaded right now. We are training city officials at regular intervals to build their capacity on sustainable transportation initiatives. And like I mentioned, the Mega Streets project is a pilot project that the city has taken up to scale up transformations itself. And the city is also working on improving the last mile connectivity around transit stations through multiple projects across the city itself. And in the case of Pimpri Chinchwad, I just want to highlight one particular project. Even though it's not a greenfield city at this point, Pimpri Chinchwad realized that the city needs a lot more livable aspects and a more sustainable aspect, which is why they have started something called the Harit Setu Master Plan, which the idea is to connect the green spaces of the city through walkable and cyclable networks. So right now the master plan is under preparation, and they're currently piloting some of the solutions in a particular neighborhood. So if that happens, then Pimpri Chinchwad will also be one of the cities in India that sets a good example like this for cities across the world. So I'd like to conclude by saying, by just highlighting this particular quote by the former mayor of Bogota: "A fish needs to swim, a bird to fly, a deer to run. We need to walk, not in order to survive, but in order to be happy." So with that, I'll bring back the image of the priority that we need to start looking at in our transport systems, and this is the kind of cities we need to start developing. Thank you.